Happy Monday, my friends. Thad Riley here, episode number 311 of the Thadcast. Cool that you're here with me. Excited for this week, excited for this Monday that we're going to have, and we're getting on the journey, my friends. We're getting on the journey. And I know, like, a lot of folks right now are kind of like, yeah, I'm in Thanksgiving week, and it's the holidays, and it's time to do my usual eat whatever I want. Hey, listen, on that day, on Thanksgiving, you just be you. You just be you. You do your thing. It's all good. Just be you. Let's not judge. Let's not judge ourselves. Let's not judge others. Let's just enjoy the week and think about the things that we're thankful for and what we're grateful for, including, are you ready for this? This is the shocking moment of the decade right here, right? Including being grateful for 2020. That's right, having a heart of gratefulness for this year that you and I have been able to be a part of, that we've been able to experience. There are so many things, actually, that we have to be grateful for. And I think my wife mentioned this the other day. The very wise Melanie Riley was talking about how, about her heart of gratefulness and about having a heart of gratefulness this year. And she brought up some really good points. And I paused and I thought, yeah, she's right. And this is the predominant message in my marriage, by the way, that right there, those two words, she's right. And I live a good life because of it. So anyway, we're not even talking about that, but I hope that this week for you is an encouraging week and a positive, and you make of it what it is. And that's kind of leading in actually to what we're talking about today. By the way, if you're watching on the YouTube and you're wondering what the heck is going on with this guy's hair, by the way, yes, the Thadcast does have a YouTube channel if you want to go that route. And some do and some do not. Most absolutely do not. So you're fine either way. Trust me on that. But my hair is wild today. I just came back from lifting at the gym, and it was one of those workouts. But I'm grateful to be there. So there you go. I'm grateful that I've been able to lift this year and keep working out and doing my thing and whatever that looks like, because it's looked a little different, right? But today I want to talk about timing. And I want to talk about it not being an inopportune time for things, being an inopportune moment for things to happen in your life. Well, it's interesting because I had a conversation with a friend of mine named Matt at a football game, probably about 6 weeks ago. I think we were just chatting it up. And he was talking about how businesses like his and like other people's have made it a mission of late to pivot and to make a move in some way, fashion, because of the world that we live in today, because of this culture that we live in today. But you see that the story of pandemics, the story of world-altering moments is really nothing new. It's not like we've been going through this for at least 6,000 years, maybe more. Whatever you believe, society's been living their existences out. We won't get into that today, but since the beginning of mankind in Genesis, we can see that so much of God's story is us sitting there looking at something and saying, this is a very inopportune time. And God saying, oh, my friend, my dear beloved child, you have no clue what I'm about to do. Let's take a few for instances and just talk about what the scriptures have to say. Let's take Noah. Noah, right from the beginning of the scriptures, all right? So Noah is commanded by God to build an ark because, why? He's going to flood and destroy the earth. And on this ark, Noah can bring his family and he can load up 2 animals of each species. I mean, this is going to be a trip, right? And he's building this ark because God is going to flood the earth. That already seems interesting enough. Did you know that this was going on during a drought? Hang with me on that for a second. During a drought that lasted about a century, I think it might have been 120 years, 90 or 120 years. One of those numbers is sticking out. Could be wrong, but I think it was actually over 100. They've had a drought for a century. And God tells Moses to build an ark. He's got to build this ark because God is going to flood the earth. Now Moses is like, yeah, right, okay. And he just goes and does it. In the meantime, folks are like, so this guy's building a giant boat because he says that something's coming and we're going to get flooded, right? Anybody who sees this creation, no, they're like, this isn't work. What are you doing? This guy is wasting all of his time in this moment I mean, if there was ever an inopportune time and the wrong time to be building an ark, it was during a drought. But faith. But faith. Right? I mean, Noah believed. So Noah built an ark during a drought. You know, it was funny because God used this guy called Joseph. And Joseph was used specifically by God to save Egypt. And not only to save Egypt, but he was used by God to save Egypt and all of pretty much the world. This famine had come for 7 years and had beleaguered all of the lands around Egypt, and including Egypt itself. And there's Joseph in the middle of it all. And why is everyone coming to Joseph? Because Joseph told them all, well, listen, for 7 years, we're going to have a famine. But for the 7 years before that, I'll help you stockpile. I've actually got a plan on how to do it. And so Pharaoh takes Joseph and he puts him in charge of the entire kingdom. The entire kingdom. You know what's funny? What's funny about this? That's pretty crazy, right? This guy, he wasn't even Egyptian. All of a sudden has as much, if not really more power than Pharaoh on a daily basis, because he's commanding everything to happen for 7 years. And then the 7 years during the famine. It's all run by Joseph. You might be wondering, what was Joseph up to right before this pronouncement of his power? Oh, he'd been spending about a decade in jail for being falsely accused of sexually assaulting and raping one of the most powerful men in Egypt's wife. Oh, that's all he was doing, right? Joseph is in jail. He's a jailbird with a sexual assault conviction against him. I don't know if they really did convictions back there. They're like, oh, yeah, she's rich and powerful. He's rich and powerful. Why would she sleep with a servant guy? I get it totally. Yeah, it must be rape. Yeah, we'll stick him in jail. We don't need this guy around. This guy's in jail. Well, do you think that maybe if you're like God's right-hand guy, you're like, hey, God, yeah, this may not be the most opportune moment to use Joseph. And God's over there like, excuse me? This is why I do this stuff and you do not. I mean, think about this. This guy, in a blink of an eye, goes from being in jail for sexual assault to being really the most powerful man in not only Egypt, but in the surrounding countries, because they have to come and beg him for food. This is how God uses people, and in the moments he chooses to use them. You don't have to really buy into it on those two stories. Let's just keep going. Because there's a narrative here, folks. And this narrative is flowing throughout the scriptures. Egypt, 400 years later, is the most powerful army on the earth. And they have the slaves, the descendants of Joseph have, over this 400 years, Joseph is gone and now they've lost power. And now all the Jewish people who had fled to Egypt for food and provisions are now slaves. They're the slaves of the Egyptian people. And this powerful army and a powerful, maybe the most powerful leader on the planet, Pharaoh, have them under his thumb. And God decides to take a man who has problems talking to people. By the way, he's wanted for murder. And God uses this same guy and it's like, hey, I know you're wanted for murder. I know you can't really talk to folks. I need you to go communicate to Pharaoh for me. And so his brother Aaron comes with Moses. And you know the story. He goes and he visits Pharaoh multiple times and lets him know plagues are coming, and before each one, I think. And Pharaoh responds with arrogance, and the Lord had hardened his heart. And eventually the Egyptians are freed by Pharaoh after a devastating plague. And they are stuck between a sea and the Pharaoh's army. And in this moment, what does God do? Moses raises his staff. And by God's power surging through that staff, the sea is parted. The Israelites walk to freedom. And Pharaoh's army is crushed. None of that was opportune. none of that timing really worked. It was a guy who couldn't communicate, leading people, a murderer, leading people out into a desert with the largest, strongest, most powerful army in the world, hunting them down. Not a single one of them dies in that battle. Yet every Egyptian that was chasing them to kill them is wiped from the earth. All because of God. Timing? Timing for any of that story? The people involved? Could you have found a more precarious character than Moses? A murderer. A guy who couldn't talk, and there he is, leading God's people. It's interesting because this flows through to Jesus. You know, he's out on his ministry and he's preaching and healing, and all of this is going on, and people are following him, and they're so desperate to follow him that they lose track of time. And he's preaching to a crowd of 4,000 people, and they get hungry. And the disciples tell them, hey, send them away. Send them away. Tell them now to go get food. Send them to the towns. Tell them to go. And it's getting late, and Jesus says, they're hungry. This doesn't work, but I want to stay. I want them to stay with me. What do we have to eat? We have just enough bread and fish to feed one family, maybe. If it's not the Riley family, that is. If it's the Rileys, we're going to need a lot more. This is an inopportune event that is going on where Jesus wants to continue ministering to this crowd of people, but they need to go eat. They haven't eaten all day. They're hungry. So he takes this little bit of fish and bread, and he breaks it and he feeds them. Oh, 4,000? Yes, 4,000. And they had baskets left over. If that doesn't move you about timing and how God works. Soon after, he did the same thing, but he did it with 5,000 people. This was Jesus. This is how Jesus works in those inopportune moments, because he knows the real story, the much better story than we do. We look at the moment and we say, I don't have the resources. I don't have the time. I don't have the voice. I don't have the leadership. This is not the right moment, God. And God's over there saying, but faith, but faith, but faith. This guy Paul, he's bad news. He's bad news. His name is Saul, actually. And he has a mission in life, and it's to hunt down and imprison and have martyred Christians, followers of Jesus. He's one of the leading Pharisees. He's been trained in the Old Testament way of things, and he is going after blasphemers, because blasphemers' punishment is death. And he's intensely going after them. And Paul was one of the best at this. He was very skilled at this. But God comes to Paul and blinds him, and in a vision speaks to him and changes his heart. And God uses this murderer, this man committing atrocities who the entire church was afraid of. He uses this man to write more books of the Bible than anyone else. This guy's like the worst choice. Not only did he have exposure to the scriptures, he knew them and memorized them, and he actually twisted them to kill people. That's what he did. And God used him through a massively humbling event to change Paul's life and then to change the rest of the world for all of eternity. God chose about the worst person possible in the worst moment in history possible to change the world and to write the scriptures. The year is 2020. There's a pandemic. There's an election that might be filled with more fraud and chaos, for sure, than we may have ever seen in our entire country's history. It's Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's the holidays. They're upon us now too. Your kids might be home for remote. You might be working at home too, or you might have lost your job, or your job might have completely changed because of this. Your moment in your life today probably doesn't look like it did on January 1st when you were setting your goals for 2020. I think what you and I can see with the heart of God through the scriptures is faith in him matters. It matters because of these moments that he creates around us, these things that he does, his hand, his mighty hand coming upon our lives. And you're sitting there and you're looking at your life and you're saying, there could not be a worse time for this to be happening. And God is saying, this is the exact timing that this should be happening in. And everything is happening exactly how it is supposed to happen. And we look at this world of chaos and we don't understand. I don't know if Joseph ever understood why he had to be thrown in jail for rape. I don't know if Paul ever understood why God allowed him to kill Christians. I don't know if Moses really understood why there had to be such a long drought. I don't know if Moses, I don't think ever got it. There's no way I think the guy got it. Like, why me? And why now? And yet God is sitting over here saying, I am going to do a new thing in you. Not because of who you are, but because of who I am. And I am going to do it today. And when we make ourselves not available for God's best to happen in our lives, and that, by the way, God's best might look really hard, and it might look really ugly in the moment that you're in. It might look brutal. It might look confusing. You may not know exactly what is going on. You may be clueless as God starts working and doing something massive in your life right now. But none of that is up to you. None of this, anything that happened, was up to any of those people that we talked about today. God's hand on those people did a mighty thing. And they were simply in the room when he did it. Our best version of us, people can write a book about it. I don't need to write a book about it. Our best version of us is on our knees before God, humbly repenting of our sin and asking God, what to next? What are we doing today? Give me a willing and open heart to be bold and faithful and to flee from sin. And that's the path that we're on. And we need to buckle up and we need to be ready. Because you, my friend, might be the world's next Moses, or Paul, or Noah. You might save so many people from something. You might bring so many people to Jesus. You might speak truth and love to someone today that you never in a million years dreamed you would be speaking truth and love to. You might have a relationship that you believe in your heart is burned forever. And God is saying, did you not read the scriptures and see all that I have done, all that I am doing, and all that I am going to do? This is about him, not us. And when we get our lives in tune with God, when we follow Jesus and walk that road that he has in front of us, I am telling you right now, it doesn't look like anything you can map out. We kind of try. We kind of fail. And it's good because it all points back to the goodness and the glory of God. So today, my friends, you may be looking at many opportunities and things in your life and you say, this is not the time. And God is saying, I need you to trust me. I need you to pause. And I need you to say, but faith. But faith. And then hold on for what I am going to do. Because I am a good God. I love you. I have power over this earth in you and through you. And you cannot do the things I am going to do. And at the end of the day, you will look at the circumstances and you will say that only could have happened because of God and you will praise my name, and you will believe, and you will see, and you will be part of a better story. Well, my friends, the scripture's full of stories like this. I gave you a couple. You read a little bit today, and you have a hard time actually not turning the page and finding one. And if we have this faith in God, let's take action. Let's move forward in his grace and trust him to do all the heavy lifting. Let's be available to him today, right now. Stop looking at the year. Stop looking at the time. Stop getting caught up in the chaos. Stop getting messed up in any of that stuff. It's Monday. It's time for you and I to believe and trust God to do a magnificent thing in our lives, in our families' lives, in our friends' lives, and in our world, in our country, in our cities, in our towns, in our neighborhoods. Jesus is still King. And we give him all the glory because he's about to do some amazing, amazing things. He already is doing them. We just want to be in the room and be part of that story. Well, amen to that. Thank you, Lord, today for the scriptures. Thank you so much, God, that you have given us your word and how it applies to years when there's pandemics and chaos in 2020. I'm excited for all of us for what Jesus is doing. And I can't wait to hear the stories of how this may have impacted your life today. A couple of closing notes here for this episode 311. First of all, I think that's a band, by the way. There you go. Shout out to the band. I think they got some pretty fun tunes. I think they're like that 90s, early 2000s. Still a little cheesy. Oh, they're all right. This episode is not about the band 311. This is episode 311. Thank you very much. I'll stop on that note. Just a couple of quick notes. Number one, if you have not joined the Thadcast Facebook group, all of my updates, links to the episodes, links to YouTube, all of that stuff is right in there. Join that group today, please, and you will automatically be approved. Secondly, I am doing a special Facebook group for my Christmas devotional called 25 Days with Jesus. That is available on Amazon. It's only, I think, $6.99 or $5.99 for the Kindle version, and it is $9.99 for the paperback. You can send that out to friends. Anybody is allowed to join our Facebook group, and it's a private group. So if you message me or put a post up on the Thadcast, actually, I'll post the link in there for the group. That might be the best way to go. I'll post the link in there. But if you want to join us, we would love that. Get that book today. Get that book for your family today. 25 Days with Jesus by Thad Riley. That's how you have to look it up. And join us on this devotional. We start on December 1st. And each day we will go through and read this devotional together. And this community is going to come together and keep us in the real reason for this season. Keep us centered on Jesus. This is a way to be in community during the holidays and make this Christmas about everything Jesus. We're going to do it together as a family. I'm going to read that devotional every single day that I can to the kids, and we're going to kind of get into it, okay? So that's kind of our plan for the holidays, to make Jesus just outshine. He already does, but to help him to outshine everything else in our lives and our hearts. So 25 Days with Jesus, it's about the historical and biblical context of the life of Jesus. It's really Jesus-centered, really about the birth of Jesus. And you might learn more about the birth of Jesus and that history and that culture during that time than you've ever known before. And that was my purpose in writing the book. So anyway, 25 Days with Jesus by Thad Riley. Message me if you have any questions, or comment on the Thadcast Facebook group if you have any questions about that. If you do not have Facebook, email me at strider.thad@gmail.com for any questions or how I can help you. Anyway, that's a lot of information today. Thank you for joining me on episode 311. If you can do a review or a rating in iTunes, that is super helpful. And share this with a friend or on social media. Join the Facebook group. Anyway, thank you for joining me here today. I hope you have a wonderful and blessed week. And until next time, my dear friends, may you be blessed.